Lesson 5. The fifth tutorial will help you to understand how to create a game class and game activity, as well as how to form a user interface. You will learn how to bind elements of the interface with activities. This knowledge will help you create different user interfaces, switch from one activity to another, and learn to handle events. Now we move on to create the main menu. When we create a project, we had already created one activity, which was set initially, and one description of our layout that is XML, where all our interfaces are stored. So what does an activity do? It's just a window that interacts with the user through the interface that is created in XML. In order to create the interface in XML, there are two ways. There is the graphical approach, which is open now, and the text interface. We are going to use a graphical one. As our game will work in a landscape mode, we choose the landscaped layout. Here it is. Here is the layout content that is set as light type by default. The development environment has many types of layouts. The main difference between them is the placement of elements on the layouts. In our case, we will need the relative and linear layouts. In a linear layout, all the things will be placed on a line, either vertically or horizontally. The relative layout places the elements on itself in relation to each other, or depending on the edges and the center of the layout. Let's try to add our background. To do this, we choose the relative layout, select the properties and the background, and a dialog box is being opened. We select Drawable and main.bg. And here came up the background. You need to take a look at our stripe at the top and see that there's a status bar and the title. Later, we will show you how to remove it during the game, but it will always be displayed in XML. Let's place the image with the title. The element is being placed from the edges, but we'll place it from the top edge and choose the main title. Our image is placed perfectly. Next, let's place our button. The button will consist of the image and the text. Let's place for this button the separate relative layout in the center. Now we're going to add everything to our relative layout. Let's add the image. Then we choose BTN using 9-patch. We do not need any resources without using 9-patch, so we can remove them, and they will not be needed anymore. There are only 2 resources left that will be used with 9-patch. Now we add the medium-sized test to the relative layout and place it in the center. Next, we set the relative layout size, 350 by 150 pixels. Also, we add other elements to our parent relative layout, and we simply stretch our text across the line and set gravity properties for it. This will indicate where the text will be placed, namely below, left, right, or at the top. We select the center horizontal, and the text is lined up at the center. Then, we stretch the image, and we got it. Now let's edit the text. Let's do it this way. You can type the text here yourself, and it will be changed. But we advise you to use from your values folder the XML string function. It may also be edited by the environment in a graphical or textual type, but we'll use the graphical type. We add the value and select the value string type, and then we type in the name start_game. And in the value line, start_game as well. Next, we save it, and now it is changed. Then, when we select text, we click on the start_game, and here it is from our resources. Here, it works. Why is this approach easier? For example, when you want to change the text or the resource, you do not need to look for the text view or some text elements throughout the entire XML files. You just edit it in one file. Also, if you are using the same text, you don't need to go to every layout to change it. You can set a value and change it here, and it will be changed automatically throughout your project. It is convenient and good. Use it. So, our XML is ready, but we still need to add one small thing. In order to use our elements and activities in the future, we should change the identifiers. What is the identifier? It helps to find our element. Let's call our relative layout button_start and hit OK. We see that our name has been changed to the ID, and for the image, we change to image_button. Now our XML is completely ready. Now, we move on to create the activity. We open the src folder, then we open our package and main menu Java. So, what do we see? We see that our main menu class is being described that inherits from the activity. In the onCreate function, we see that we assign and link our activity to main.xml.main. The solution is not written here. Now we look at the things that we will use in the future. This is the relative layout that we call button, and we also use image view. Let's call it image button. Now we need to link our variable activity to the elements. How do we do this? We assign the button and specify that it is going to be the relative layout, and we call a function findViewById. And here we choose the identifier that we have given to our relative layout. Here it is a start button. We tied our variable to an element in XML. We do the same with the image button. In addition, we will use our text, but initially we did not assign the ID to it. So we go back to XML and assign a text_start ID, and we save it. Then we go back, and here we also add a text view and link to it. Next, we notice that our font is not used in the text. If we go to the folder with the resources and open our font, we will see that. How do we use the font? We move to our activity. And also, we need to remind you that the font should be downloaded from the Assets folder. But we download it in a different way from the RES folder, not like regular resources. So, we choose Typeface, Custom, Equals, and Create it. So, we have a method to create with assets. Then, we choose assets that allow us to access the assets folder. And as a path, we specify our file name. If inside of the assets folder we have other folders, we specify the specific path to the font. In our case, this is the font. So, we downloaded our font and we applied it to our text view. Now, this font will be used in text view. Now we move on to handle the events. In order to handle the events, we use listeners in the development environment. A listener is the developer of a specific event in which we describe what a program should do at the specific event. In our case, our relative layout will handle two events, such as onTouch and onClick. Now we set the listeners on the relative layout set on tough listener new, and the methods are added automatically. Now the program is highlighting the new element in red, but that's okay. We have to import a tough listener from the Android library. This is done very simply. We can use the Control plus Lock plus Shift plus O keys, or by selecting it from the context menu. Also, after this, we will add it to the onClick developer. An onClick listener is taken from the Android library as well. Now all that we have left to describe is what it should do with onTouch and onClick. It should change the image onTouch and make it illuminated. And when we remove a finger from the button, it should return it to its original state. Next, when we click on the relative layout, it must move to a new activity. Now, let's create it. In order to create an activity, we move to our Package Explorer and choose New Class. Let's call it Game, and in the future, it will be our game class, and we will inherit it from the activity. Now we click on Finish. As we can see, the class is created, but it went into another package because we did not specify it. We can move it to another package. This is no problem. The activity does not have an onCreate method, so let's create it. We must specify what XML will be used for it. In the same way, let's create the XML. To create XML in the Package Explorer, we do a right-click and select New XML Android File. Next, we specify the type of layout resources, and then we indicate the project that is our game and the XML name that is game. Also, we can select the root element that is the relative layout. We can choose Next or Finish. We click on Finish. Here, the XML is created, and as we see here, this is our root relative layout. Then we do an XML landscape. Now we link our second activity to XML, and when we move to the game activity, we place a pause button in there, so that it would not look empty. But we will place it dynamically. Let's link the relative layout to the XML game and assign to it the identifier and add it to our activity. So we link a layer in XML to a variable in the activity. We are done with it, so we move on. Features of dynamic element creation are not written in XML. We add them in the creation process of activity. Now we'll create XML for the pause button. This XML will be used only as a pause button, not as a layer. You already know how to create XML, so we just do it. The XML is done, and the only new thing that we used is the margin. It is an indentation from the side of the left, right, top, or bottom. Now the main task is to place the XML element as a new button. We use Layout Inflator to do this. Layout Inflator allows us to create and use view in XML. So, here it is initialized. Then, using Layout Inflator, we create our view. But first, we create the variable. Let's call it the pause button. Next, we import it from the Android library. We assign to our pause button equals myInflator and specify the name of the XML resource that will be used for view. Then we tape null and false. Next, we will need our screen size for dynamic placement of our element on the screen. This is done like this, but we are not going to concentrate too much on that. More importantly, that the width and height of the screen will be stored in these two variables. Then we set the value for our pause button. Now, for the proper operation of Layout Inflator, we change the SDK target of our project. This is done in the project properties. We change the project build target to 4.0.3 and then click on the Apply and OK buttons. We are done here. Now, here is displayed that we are using the Android 4.0.3 library, and in the manifest is written the min version of SDK, just like in Android 2.2. Now we can set the X and Y positions for our button. The pause button will be placed at the top along X, the screen width minus 250 pixels. After that, we add the pause button to the relative layout and set the button settings for the height and width. Then we take its layout settings and change the height of 250 pixels. And we do the same thing with width. Now, when we described all the pause button settings, we can move to the game activity. To do this, we go back to the main menu in the handler onClick Listener, and then we will run our activity through our intent. To do this, we create a new intent and give it a name. And then we assign new intent value, where we pass activity by two parameters from which we want to run a new activity and its class. In our case, this is the main menu, and the class that we want to run is the game class. Alright, the intent is created. Now we just have to run the activity. To do this, we type Start Activity and select My Intent Settings. Now the event handler is created, and our application is aware that it has one more activity by the name Main Menu, and we will have to add it to the manifest. If this is not done, there will be many errors. To do this, we open the manifest and go to the Application tab. There is the Application Notes tab at the bottom. Here, we click on Add Button and choose Activity, and attributes appear on the right. We select the name and activity. Now we can run our project on the device and see how it works. Here it starts. We click on the Start Game button and go to the game activity where the Pause button is located. You may note that at the top are the status bar and the title application. To remove it, we again need to specify it in the manifest, and we will do it now. We also set some attributes for our activity, like a screen orientation, as our game is used only in landscape mode, and we set the sensor landscape value. This is specified in the main menu and activity of the game. To make our application in a full-size screen without the title bar, we need to go to the last tab of the Android manifest, then select Text Editing, and add the Android theme to the application tag. Next, we choose a style without the title bar, full screen, and we save it. Our application now runs on full screen. Now, when we configured both activities in the manifest, we will run our project on the device and see how its look has changed. Now it is displayed in full screen without the title bar, and it also moves in the game activity. Now we'll create the pause in the menu in the game activity, and we will implement a return of the game activity from the pause menu. We'll have to create an XML with a description of our layer pause menu, and we add it to the game activity. We already know how to create XML, so we will do it easily. We created a XML pause menu and added the relative layout with identifiers rel, image view with identifier IamCont, and image view with identifier toMain. In this instance, they will be our buttons. We link our XML to the game activity. It's the same as we did with the pause button. Here, we created a view using XML. And now the pause should only occur when we click on the pause button. We set visibility for it and tell it to disappear. That is it. Now it will be placed in our activity, but it will be hidden. Then we find image view and link it to our variables so that we can assign them to the listeners later. As you can see, we created image view, but listeners will be created separately from the onCreate method. Next, we create a second onClick listener, and that is our toMain menu. Now we've created and assigned a listener to each image. Now let's describe this process. When we click on Continue, the pause menu should disappear. We set the value for visibility to disappear and return the pause button, because after clicking, the pause disappears. We tell it that it is visible now. Now we will describe the onClick listener and toMain menu. It's simple. We tell our class that we do not need it. Now let's create an on-click listener for the pause button. We create it separately. So, we created it. Now, what should happen when we click on the pause button? We tell the button that we do not need it. We have to hide it and show our pause to the menu. It should be noted that we now have to put the game on pause. Then we assign the pause button to our class. It is on-click listener. Now we can run our project. Let's see how it works. Here is the Start button, and we select Start Game, Pause button, Pause menu, and then we click on Continue and go back again in the game activity, and then to the main menu. Everything works fine. Our lesson is over. In the next lesson, we will create a game panel in our class of game activity and discuss it in more detail. Make sure you're keeping detailed notes.